That's the honest truth of it. 3 months the excavation team had been losing power tools inside the outer chamber, batteries draining in minutes, sensor arrays going dark, 2 expensive survey drones simply stopping mid-air and dropping like stones. The Kethali Dig Authority had exhausted their own engineers. They'd brought in specialists from the university on Sora Prime. They'd petitioned the Council of Aligned Worlds for a technical assessor. The council sent me. My name is Duro Ven. I fix things. I have fixed things for 31 years on 14 worlds, and the one thing I've learned is that every machine, no matter how old, no matter how alien, has a panel somewhere that opens. A point of access. An engineer's door. The Sentinel did not look like a machine. It stood at the far end of the inner vault, 3 meters of smooth black iron shaped like a man who had decided to become something more than a man.
No visible sims. No obvious ports.
The surface was covered in glyphs, shallow carved, almost worn flat by time, and the thing had stood in that exact posture for 3,000 years by the Kethali's own dating. Right arm at its side, left arm slightly raised, head angled perhaps 5 degrees downward, as though it had been interrupted mid-sentence and simply stopped. Every civilization that had claimed this moon had tried to open it. I'd read the dossier on the transit here. The Vorican Empire had brought a high priest and a blood sacrifice. The Meth Confederacy had connected it to a power relay powerful enough to light a city. The Hessian Conclave had spent 2 years bombarding it with decryption signals. The thing had not moved. Had not responded. Had not, as far as anyone could measure, done anything at all except drain every power device that came within 40 meters of it. Steadily, silently, like a sleeping thing that was still breathing. The Kethali scholars stationed at the vault's mouth watched me walk in with the kind of careful faces people make when they don't want you to know they think you're going to fail. I ignored them. I walked to the Sentinel, set my kit down on the stone floor, and started with the basics. The electromagnetic signature was extraordinary. The drain wasn't random. It had a shape, a rhythm. I crouched with my manual reader and traced it along the construct's base, up the left leg, across the torso. Not a malfunction. A request. Something inside was asking for a very specific kind of input and rejecting everything it got. All right, I said to it. I talk to machines. I've always talked to machines. My wife used to say it was my most endearing quality and also my most alarming one. What are you hungry for? The glyphs did not answer. I worked for 6 hours. I mapped the drain pattern. I identified 3 areas of concentrated electromagnetic activity: chest center, left forearm, the base of the skull, and I made notes, cross-referenced what I could against the partial translation the Kethla scholars had managed on the outer vault inscriptions. The translations were fragmentary. Most of the script was in a dialect that didn't match any known Kethali ancestor language. One phrase appeared on the inner vault wall 4 times, and the best translation the scholars had was, awaiting verification of Maker's line. I noted that and moved on. By the time I stood to take a break, my knees were complaining and the light from a vault entrance had shifted to the cold blue of the moon's short afternoon. 2 of the Kethali observers had gone. The one who remained, a young woman named Tessa Lee, the site's lead archaeologist, was sitting on a low stone block near the entrance, watching me with the kind of patient attention that meant she'd given up expecting results and had switched to simply witnessing. Has anyone tried talking to it? I asked. She blinked. The Vorican high priest recited the entire litany of opening. 12 hours. I meant casually, I said. She had no answer for that. I turned back to the construct and did what I always do when I've mapped a system and haven't found the fault yet. I went to the most obvious place and knocked. Not hard. 3 knuckles, twice, on the center of the chest, the way you'd knock on a door you weren't sure was occupied. Then, because I'd said I'd talk to it, I said the first thing that came to mind. Is anyone home? The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. I know because I counted, and I have counted that silence many times since. Then the glyphs ignited. Not all at once. From the base up, a slow climb, like fire catching on damp wood, deliberate and unstoppable. The shallow carved lines I'd been studying for 6 hours filled with pale blue light, and the light was warm, not cold, the way light sometimes surprises you by feeling like a hand rather than a beam. The construct's head moved. 5 degrees back to level. The left arm, already slightly raised, rose another 10 degrees. I did not step back. This surprises people when I tell the story. But I had spent 6 hours with this thing and I had formed an opinion of it, the way you form an opinion of any machine. And my opinion was that it was not broken, it was waiting, and whatever it was waiting for, It had been waiting patiently, and patience that long does not turn violent. I heard Tessalee make a sound behind me. I heard footsteps. The two observers who had left must have been near the entrance. They came back, fast. I heard, from somewhere above, the scrape of chairs in the surface monitoring station. The construct's eyes opened. They were not lights. They were apertures, irises of layered material, opening like a camera lens, and behind them was the same pale blue of the glyphs, but deeper, older. It looked at me. I have worked on 14 worlds. I have repaired things that were built before my civilization knew what a star was. I have held components older than the human diaspora in my bare hands. I am not easily moved. I was moved. The glyph sequence reached the construct skull. The entire surface was alight now, not blazing, not blinding, simply present, the way a screen comes on when the system finishes booting. Around the base of the vault, the inscription on the walls I'd been half-reading all day lit as well, phrase by phrase, section by section, the alien script scrolling in a language no one in this room could fully read. Except I recognized one word in it. One cluster of symbols that appeared in the chest panel area, in the forearm, in the skull, the 3 zones of concentrated activity I'd mapped this morning. I'd seen that cluster before. Not in the Kefala translations. Not in the dossier. On a pendant my grandmother had worn. A pendant she'd called a family mark, old metal, covered in scratches she said were decorative. The construct spoke. It was not loud. It did not need to be loud. The acoustics of the vault carried the voice perfectly, and the voice was not frightening. It was careful, the way a precise instrument is careful. It said, "Calibration complete. Hello again, engineer." The silence afterward was absolute. Tessalee said something in Kefala behind me, very quietly, that I didn't have the translation for. One of the returned observers had his hand over his mouth. The other had both hands pressed flat against the wall behind him, as though he needed something solid. I looked at the construct. Its aperture eyes were on me and only me, and the blue behind them was steady, unhurried, the light of something that has finished a very long wait and found the wait entirely reasonable given the alternative. I thought about my grandmother's pendant. I thought about the word she'd used for it, not the Kefali word for mark, not any word I'd learned in school. An older word. A word from a language she called the trade tongue of the old roots, the roots before the Kefali charted the inner systems, before anyone charted them. I am a repair technician. I fix things. I have never believed I was anything other than what I appear to be, a competent man with good hands and a methodical mind, born on a middling world, trained in a middling school, working for a decent wage on other people's problems. I said, because it seemed like the right thing to say, the only honest thing, I didn't know. The construct's head inclined slightly, not a bow, something more precise than a bow, an acknowledgement between equals. The line does not need to know, it said. It only needs to arrive. The glyphs across the vault walls had finished their scroll. They held steady now, every line lit, the full text displayed for the first time in 3,000 years, and Tessalee, who had been silent since the construct spoke, stepped forward slowly, her reader extended, her face the face of someone who has just watched the shape of their life's work rearrange itself. What came next took weeks. Authorities. Arguments. Delegations from 4 governments who all had prior claims on this moon and none of whom had been spoken to by the machine in its vault. There were hearings. There was a great deal of careful diplomatic language. I sat through most of it. I answered questions when I was asked. I told the truth, which was simple. I had knocked, I had asked if anyone was home, and the construct had answered. What the construct told me, in those first days while the chaos gathered at the vault mouth, what it told me in the careful, patient voice of something that has been waiting long enough to choose its words perfectly, was this: it was not a weapon, not a throne, not a god engine. It was a calibration system. The most sophisticated diagnostic and repair platform ever built in this sector of space, constructed by a team of engineers whose civilization had risen and fallen and been forgotten before the Kefali learned to write. Its purpose was maintenance, the maintenance of a network of monitoring stations, power relays, environmental regulators, all the quiet infrastructure that kept 300 inhabited worlds habitable and no one living on those worlds knew it existed. It had been waiting for a qualified engineer to resume the work. I asked it why it had refused everyone else. They did not knock, it said. They demanded. The line of the maker does not demand. It asks, because it knows the work is collaborative. My grandmother's pendant is in a case in my workshop now, behind sealed glass, on permanent loan to the Heritage Authority. I wouldn't say I miss wearing it. I never wore it. It was hers, but I visit it sometimes when I'm between jobs. The scratches that were decorative are not scratches. They are the same glyph cluster that appears in the construct's chest panel and forearm and skull. They are a name. My name, apparently. Or the name of the line I carry. I fix things for 31 years on 14 worlds. It turns out I was just getting started.